Okay, here we are in lesson 6, and we are talking about functions. As we know, if we write this in the console, it returns the complete function. But if we invoke the function, it returns the result of the calculation. Before we begin talking about functions, I want to show you a system for saving changes and refreshing the browser. Every time we make a change to our JavaScript code, we have to save it and then refresh the browser. After that, we can see the change in memory. The reason we have to do it in this way is because although the changes are saved in the JavaScript file, they are not loaded into memory until this line processes in the HTML file. The process from the beginning is to open our IDE, open the Windows Explorer window, go to the folder where the files are, and for this lesson, the files are here, and we drag them into the IDE window. This button opens and closes the window that shows us the files in our project. Double-click the files you want to see, and then press the button to close the file window, and then close Windows Explorer. To load the files in the browser, open the file window. The HTML file has to be showing in the window. Right-click on the file and choose Open in Browser. And now we're ready to begin working with our code. Click in the browser window and press F12 to show the environment for testing and experimenting with the code. We primarily use 3 tabs. In the Source tab, we can see the loaded code. And you can show the console in this window by pressing the Escape key. Now we're looking at the JavaScript code, but we can click on the index.html file to see the code inside of it. Often, I like to work in this window, but also, as we've seen, I like to work in the console window in order to have a cleaner view. When we want to inspect and experiment with our HTML code and its CSS, we can use the Elements tab. Okay, now that we understand all of that, I want to show you something else. It's a service that makes saving the code and refreshing the browser more fluid and convenient. Down at the bottom, it says Go Live. When I click it, the service starts. You can see that a new tab has opened in the browser, and we can close the old one. Now, every time we save the file in our IDE, with Control S, the browser refreshes automatically. I make a change here and press Control S to save the file, and we can see the change here immediately without having to use my mouse to click in the browser and then press F5 to reload it. This IDE service is excellent. And now, when I save files in the IDE, you'll know what's going on. And with that, we can return to talking about functions. As we've seen, when I invoke this function, it returns the value of the calculation. Now we are going to change the function and put these variables inside of this structure. When we invoke the function like this, without passing anything to the function context, it returns NaN, not a number. And this is because we haven't passed anything to the function when we invoked it. And this can't add nothing and nothing. In the previous lesson, I said that invoking a function like this is like passing 0. But if this were true, we would expect the result to be 0. The reason the result is NaN and not 0 is because what I said before is only partly true. With a structure like this inside of a function, when we invoke it like this, yes, it is like passing a 0, because the variable inside of the function is being compared to another value. With this, the interpreter can convert an empty variable to a 0. But if the computer has to do a calculation with the values, this doesn't work, and we receive the value NaN, not a number. But of course, we are not going to do this. We are going to do something like this. And this is going to return a 3. But remember, when we do things like invoking a function inside of the console, we are just testing and experimenting. After testing and experimenting, if we want to use a line like this in our program, it needs to be saved in the file, like this. But I've already saved the file, yet it seems like nothing has been returned. Remember that when I saved this file in the IDE, the browser refreshed automatically. And with this, the JavaScript code reloaded into memory. When this happened, the interpreter read the code one line at a time and arrived at this line. This line invoked this function, and this function returned a value. But we don't see it in the console. This is because when we do things in the console, the values returned are shown in the console. But when the line is in our code, the value returned replaces the invocation. Reviewing once again, when I saved the file in the IDE, it caused the browser to refresh automatically. And the script tag in the HTML file caused the JavaScript code to reload. And when the JavaScript loaded, as we know, all of the variables in the global space were loaded into the stack. Only after that, the interpreter began reading the lines one after another. When this line was read, a copy of the function was created to be the function context where the lines of the function would be executed. These two values were passed to the function, and when this line executed, it used the values. And this line had something to return, and it returned it here. Well, this is a strange situation because this value is sitting in the global space, but we are not doing anything with it, and we don't have a way to connect to it. We can resolve this situation by writing a line like this. Now, when the function context returns the value, we can access it through the variable. As a programmer, you have to become accustomed to this situation in which your eyes are seeing this, but this isn't what's assigned to the variable. The value returned by the function is what's assigned. At no point, this was assigned to the variable. This has to resolve itself to a value before the variable in the stack can be assigned. Understand that these other variables, yes, they are being assigned to what your eyes are seeing. This doesn't have anything with it in the stack. This has a string with it in the stack. This points to data structured in the form of an object in the heap, and this points to data structured in the form of a function in the heap. But this has to resolve to a value before the variable can be assigned. What your eyes see in the line isn't what's assigned to the variable. You need to think a lot about this until you understand it clearly. And one other thing, when I've been talking about these functions, I've been calling these variables. And yes, they are a kind of variable. But when a variable is here, we call it a parameter. And the value we pass to the parameter is called an argument. These are arguments that we pass to parameters. And with that, I think you have enough to think about for this lesson. We will continue in Lesson 7.